Application Security Weekly delivers interviews and news from the worlds of AppSec, DevOps, and all the other ways people find and fix software flaws. Join us as we explore how the latest news highlights modern security practices or reminds us of the missing ones. We also bring insights from interviews on topics from training to threat modeling, from open source tools to cloud-native techniques, plus an occasional reference from new wave to synthwave. Find us at securityweekly.com/subscribe or look for Application Security Weekly wherever you pick your podcasts.
Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. There was another announcement for securitypodcaster.com. You should go there. It's a great website. And we've added Mr. Lee Neely. Lee Neely, welcome.
It's good to be here. Happy Wednesday night.
It's good to have you here,
Hump Day,
my friend. I think we wanted to, we're all kind of hot to trot to talk about LogoFAIL, which is a new set of many different vulnerabilities in image parsing in UEFI as discovered by Binarly. And we've been kind of unpacking it. Lee, I'm curious your thoughts, because I'm like so close to it that I almost want to get, Bill and Lee and Josh, when he comes back, like you're like, what are you seeing and perceiving about it?
So I was looking at it a couple ways. First, I was looking at where it came from, which was essentially, you've got this really complicated UEFI and you've got some image processing code in it, and it's old and buggy and it's getting exploited. And it's the exact opposite of a finger snap to get BIOS updates out for UEFI. I mean, it's so complicated. I feel for the folks because the vendors have put out updates, but holy crap. And then we got to deploy them and have people deploy the genuine one, not a jacked up one.
Yeah, but I don't think anyone's actually released an update for it. At least in my research, I couldn't find where an update was released.
I may have got my wires crossed. There's a couple of things that there are updates and aren't, so
it's very confusing. It took me some time to unpack just that part of it with the help of some of my coworkers and me going, are you guys reading the same thing I'm reading?
Yeah, and then when I was reading that, it was, it works on AMD or Intel because it's the libraries in the UEFI. It doesn't care what the CPU is.
Right, it doesn't care what the CPU is, correct.
That guy says what? Boot guard and what are the other? It's like 3 or 4 things it bypasses.
Someone was writing, Stephen something at ZDNet was writing that he said something like, if you run a Dell computer, it has boot guard. And and then he's like, then you're not vulnerable. I'm like, oh, time out. Hold on. Boot guard is implemented by multiple OEMs. Like, it's not just Dell that has boot guard. Right. Boot guard is an Intel technology that comes available as an option on Intel-based CPUs. We did a below the surface episode where we talked about boot guard. So if you go back and below the surface, we interviewed someone, can't remember the name, interviewed someone from Intel, and we had a discussion about boot guard, and he gave I couldn't do it justice, but it is an Intel technology. Now, I got to be careful how I phrase some of the things that I'm about to say, but
NDA.
It was, this research was presented or is going to be presented at Black Hat Europe, and my friend Bob read the slides, and in the slides it does say that it can bypass Intel's boot guard. Now, I don't think Stephen's completely incorrect either, right? I think the answer, as is with most things with UEFI, because it's so complicated and intertwined into systems and implemented differently by every single OEM, that it's going to depend. My personal opinion, and I haven't validated this because the actual research hasn't been fully published, nor have any exploits for it. So without that, I can't say for certain. But my guess is, on some systems, you'll be able to bypass boot guard. On some systems, maybe not. And it's going to be implementation dependent, as that's how these things go. Now, I kind of want to go back to the article that Stephen wrote, because again, I'm not picking on Stephen, but he offered some great points on this for us to nitpick, basically. So we're nitpicking, and you think you're a great author, and you did a great job, dude. And it's my story number 13. So where he's absolutely correct. Macs, smartphones, and other devices that don't use UEFI are not vulnerable, right? That also goes for core boot, purism, are not known to be vulnerable. Now, that's not saying that if they process an image in some way. Now, what he said was that Macs actually load a static image and they don't allow you to change that image, right? Which is the difference between a closed ecosystem and an open ecosystem between Macs and PCs. Intel-based PCs are at a significant disadvantage because they have to allow for these customizations, and that's where vulnerabilities crop up. However, if you're not using UEFI, in this case, you're likely not vulnerable unless someone were to analyze Purism, Core Boot, or Macs or a different kind of animal in this respect with images. They could still have vulnerabilities. Like, just because you're running different code doesn't mean you have vulnerabilities. You just don't have the same vulnerabilities that UEFI has, right? So Purism kind of put out this post. I'm like, don't make people think that you're more secure because you don't have this bug and you're not implementing UEFI from Tiano Core. Maybe you have, and you've changed it significantly. That just means you have a different code base. Doesn't mean you're necessarily more secure. Because I think there's a lot of people out there like, oh, I'm on a PC that has Core Boot, so I'll be more secure. Maybe, maybe not. Again, Core Boot is still software that's doing the same thing that the UEFI software is doing. It's just doing it differently. So be careful with those notions. Now, there are certain advantages that the Core Boot is open and can be more maintainable, the whole thing. I get it. Now, the other thing that, so we talked about the boot guard thing. Again, I really think that's going to depend. Now, he says when it comes to remediation, he said, if you do have vulnerable machines, you first need to make sure no one can get into the device in the first place. Now, Stephen, when you come back from your fairy tale land where no one's computers are being compromised, we'll have the discussion on how it's like really hard to prevent your computer from being hacked, okay? Like, that's why we all have jobs. That's why we have this whole industry. If we could sit back and say, well, it's really super difficult and like impossible for someone to hack into someone else's computer, we can all retire and move on to a different field. But we're totally not there yet, man. Like what I just talked about is fairy tale land, and we're not in fairy tale land. We're in reality, and the reality is people's shit gets hacked. And also, he says if the trick is to keep attackers from getting access to the EFI partition ESP in the first place. Now you're also in fairy tale land, living that there's no such thing as local privilege escalation vulnerabilities and exploits. There's thousands of ways. Like let me count the ways in which attackers can escalate privileges. Again, we live here in reality where this stuff is built on software that's built by humans that has flaws that can be taken advantage of to escalate privileges, right? And we know about a whole bunch of those. And it's hard to remediate that whole bunch that we know about. There's probably, my guess is, a whole bunch we don't know about that are being exploited as well. And there's a whole bunch more we're going to find out about in the future because software has flaws. I mean, that's just what it comes down to. So I don't like this notion of I can protect myself from this vulnerability if, one, I don't let my computer get hacked, and two, I don't let people escalate privileges. Like, let's start our security with someone's going to break into my computer and escalate privilege. Now let's hope you've applied the patches to make sure that they can't persist on your system in UEFI forever, and reinstalling and formatting your hard drive and reinstalling your operating system doesn't do a damn bit of good because they're just going to reinfect it because they're in UEFI. That's the threat that we're protecting against here. I don't want people to lose sight of that and just go, oh, well, I patch my system and I monitor it and all this stuff and I harden it, so therefore I don't have to worry about these other exploits. You do.
Yeah. Oh, and there's one little piece you left out. You know, that guy that says, well, I've got Secure Boot, not Intel Boot Guard. Guess what? Game over on both of you. Yeah.
Secure Boot is even more of a squishy target than Boot Guard.
Right. And so you're both in the crosshairs. That's not forget that.
If you can get, in my estimation is, if you can compromise UEFI earlier in the boot stages, and there's a great, we can go through it sometime if you want, but there's like a great graphic that talks about all the stages of boot, right? From the early system initialization, reset vector, all the way through when bootloader loads kernel, and all the stuff that happens in between are all broken down into phases. In the earlier phases you can get into, the more you can circumvent and just be ahead of whatever protections exist, right? Oh. So if you're early in the Dixie driver execution phase, you could circumvent many of those controls. Secure boot, certainly. Boot guard, again, right. It kind of depends.
Right, and I suspect those are lighter weight with less overhead so that the system isn't so busy booting securely and taking forever.
That's correct.
I actually did have a question for you. That's something I ran across that was confusing to me. And that was when I was reading one of the article, they said something about in the bogus firmware, they're embedding the image or the hack part in the unsigned piece of the firmware. And I was like, wait a minute, why isn't every bit of the firmware signed? Am I misunderstanding what they're saying, or is that actually a thing? There are parts.
It is actually a thing because certain parts have to change.
Oh, duh. Right. Sorry.
Yeah, like if you're allowing your image to be changed, then that part's usually not signed.
You're not going to sign that.
There are other parts that, like secure boot revocation lists, they are signed, but you can actually write to that variable because you need to update your revocation list. But the revocation list has to be signed by the keychain that implements secure boot on your system. And then there's other parts where like you should never be able to write to. That's where boot guard comes in, right? Unless it's signed by someone else. So there's different levels of signing based on what you're doing. But they're all parts of all this that can change.
No, there's lots of signing
degrees. Lots of dishes. Well, that's why I wrote that post, the Keys to the Kingdom, where I talked about all the cryptographic keys and chains of trust that happen because it's not easy to digest. There's lots of different parts that are signed by different bodies for different things, again, depending on the configuration.
Yeah. I mean, I understand the complexity, and I think do read the binarily report or, anybody else who's into this because it's really cool what it does and how it works. But damn, I still get lost down in the UEFI details, but I can understand, exploiting an old version of a buggy library and then how that works. It just goes from there. It's riveting.
And it depends too on which UEFI manufacturers. You got AMI inside Phoenix, and then they all implement different image processors. Because don't forget, Intel AMD creates specifications, and then the BIOS or UEFI manufacturers, if they will, AMI Phoenix inside, some others too, right? They provide the core UEFI functionality, but then they hand that off to your Dell, HP, Lenovo framework kind of thing that does further customizations. And that's part of the whole supply chain. And each one of those players, if you will, can play a different role in setting secure configuration in all that stuff. And they have lots of options to do that. I think some of Intel's frustration is we make available these really awesome security mechanisms, but sometimes throughout the supply chain, people choose not to implement them, right? And that's frustrating for Intel, I guess, because I asked Intel, people from Intel
sometimes.
I'm like, that's got to be frustrating to you that you've built. Vint Zimmer is one of the most brilliant engineers I've ever interviewed. And I'm like, dude, it's got to be frustrating that you've engineered this really awesome stuff and then people don't use it. He's like, yeah, welcome to my world. So, but he takes some ownership for that too. I got to make sure we educate people and explain why they should implement this stuff. But so the fix is kind of interesting. So I spent some time this week banging my head against the wall going, well, what has actually been disclosed in terms of vulnerabilities and actual CVEs? So it turns out there is a VU note, right? That's my coworker Nate was explaining this to me. When you find a vulnerability that affects multiple vendors, you can go to CERT, US Carnegie Mellon CERT, and go, I need you to open up a VU note, and then I need you to notify these people who I believe are affected, or go to your constituents, and they will track it in a ticket. So there's a ticket that gets created that in a system, I can't remember the name of, it's in the thing. There's a system that creates a tracking ticket, and that tracking ticket you can view publicly, and then everyone who's affected can start putting information. Now, there's an internal access to that ticket that gives you more information, but then there's the public-facing, hey, Binary found this thing. It affects AMI, Phoenix, Inside, Intel, and then it lists out a whole bunch of other people that could possibly be affected. And then other folks can chime in, like Microsoft can go, we're not affected, right? And then everyone can kind of collaborate on that. So they created that. Stemming from that so far, I counted, as the time of this broadcast, and I want to make sure that I underscore that point, because there was points in this week where I was like, telling my internal team, I'm like, this hasn't been scored yet by NVD. And they're like, what are you talking about, Paul? Right. The score's right here. I'm like, well, an hour ago, that score did not exist. I swear. They're like, I don't know if you're going crazy, Paul. And they're like, no, you're not going crazy. They're like, that's probably the case, right? So, like, this is being updated, like, in real time. So, as of right now, the way I understand it, and it could have changed from earlier when I looked, but there were 4 CVEs issued. I think 1 for Inside, 2 for AMI, and 1 for Phoenix. And varying degrees of who has scored them and what the scoring has been. Inside's the most interesting example, as I don't know if Inside's a CNA or not, but Inside produced their own CVSS score, and I believe it was a 4.4. For their vulnerability. NVD scored the same vulnerability, same CVE scored by NVD, 5.5. Binary did its own independent score, 8.2, critical or high severity.
Whoa.
Yeah. Now, we're speculating that Inside and NVD said this is just a denial of service condition, and Binary is saying, nope, this can be exploited. And I think that one was an integer overflow. So, and like, we don't know. Like, did Binary go write an exploit? Like, I don't know. Is there an exploit available? I haven't seen one. So, I think that's some of the basis for the scoring, right? Now, the one for Phoenix, no one has scored it. There's a CVE issued. There's a Phoenix, like, security announcement. Yes, we've got a vulnerability. Here's the CVE. As the last time I looked, earlier today maybe, no one had scored it. No one had scored it. And the one in the middle, AMI, I'm not sure if that one was scored or not. I think one of the 3, right? So AMI, in NVD, and Binary, one of them scored it. I don't remember what the score was for that one on the top of my head. So I thought all that was pretty. Oh, that one was higher. That one was scored by someone. The AMI one was scored as like an 8.5 or something. It was scored high. And I was thinking, I'm like, why would the Inside one be marked as 4 point something, but then the AMI one be marked as 8 point something? And that could just be the differences in the scoring. And my thinking is, does it require physical access versus can it be exploited remotely, greatly impacts the score, right? So my takeaway from all that for everyone is we don't really know the severity, right? I'm not saying you shouldn't patch, but there's some debate as to the severity, and it's going to differ based on who is getting this. Now, the interesting thing is when I looked at Intel, HP, Dell, Lenovo, Gigabyte, MSI, and Framework. All of those OEMs, when I looked yesterday anyway, had not issued any security advisories, did not have any CVEs assigned to them for this issue. The thing I found with almost all 6 or 7 of them is users on their forum reporting that, hey, LogoFAIL came out, this is pretty big vulnerability affecting 95% of PCs out there. Like, do you have a fix for this yet? And all of them are like, yeah, no, I don't have a fix yet. Framework did say publicly that they are working with Binary and waiting for Inside to issue the fix, right? Which is part of this supply chain, is that Framework can't just go and make changes. They got to wait for Inside to fix this bug. They have to then take the fix. They have to test the fix, validate the fix, package it up, and then produce it. And then the users have to download it and install it. So we're still in this process of it could take years to like infinity for this fix to roll out of varying severity. That's my assessment.
And I suspect it's going to be this isn't necessarily the last one for this kind of an issue. I mean, it's like, how many times have we seen subsequent fixes after they fix one issue with a software flaw? There's another one because people keep pulling the threads to see where the issues are. I mean, I'm not trying to set them up to fail, but
well, I think one of the issues that just really stands out to me, Paul, and I didn't want to interrupt because you were on a heck of a rant there.
Yeah, I was on a tear. I need a break now. Take it away.
Yeah.
Everyone else.
Like when we start talking about UEFI and you've alluded to this in the past, just how absolutely complicated it is, right? So the specs are just hundreds of pages long and those kind of things. And so, Lee, to your point, like that complexity is going to lead to issues going forward. And the way I kind of feel about this is any time that you have a parser that's parsing anything, especially images or anything that's user supplied, could be user supplied, right? That it more than likely has a problem in it, and it's going to have to get beat up to be able to get found. Those kind of things. I'm glad that it's been found, but Lee, like the way that you started it, we can't even get people to upgrade their BIOS UEFI. You just get it out. When it's to fix a problem that they have, right? So this is going to be an everlasting problem, and it's not going to be until like the ransomware groups start moving into using this flaw, because it's probably going to exist, right? And go ahead and wipe the box and reload it. I'll get you on the next run, right? Like that's how this is going to get fixed.
Right. I also had this scenario where some user discovers a BIOS flaw and they need a new one, and maybe they try to go to the manufacturer site, but they can't get to the BIOS update, so that they search the internet and find something with a newer version, and guess what they just installed?
Yeah.
And I maybe that's a little fatalistic, but it's hard enough to get BIOS installed, like you said, but I mean, geez, and to have them check it make sure it's the genuine right one. Oh my, I'd rather do that for people.
There are protection mechanisms to make sure you don't install the wrong one. In fact, you can't because of cryptographic keys and signing and such. Yeah. However, if a manufacturer's signing private key has leaked, MSI, that means that it's totally possible to backdoor and update and have people install it. And I joke, but that actually did happen. It has happened. So.
Yeah, but not knowing the exact flaw, not knowing that from what I understand, it's a chain of vulnerabilities that, in here, and there is at least a possibility of code execution, those kind of things. It is certainly within the realm of possibility that you go out hunting for a BIOS upgrade and get dropped an executable file that, uses those attacks to install malicious.
Right. Yeah. No, agreed. Yeah. So it doesn't actually apply the update. It kind of fakes the update, but really installs malware. Right.
Yep.
Just like I'm downloading music or movies 20 years ago. I mean, Bob. Right. Bob was telling me about that.
Bob's Plex server is awesome. I'm just going to say that.
Awesome. Gold. Anything else on LogoFAIL? We beat that one to death.
But it was a good conversation.
It was a good conversation. I agree. Oh, another amazing thing. Did you guys read my story number 12? Hi, my name is Keyboard. Did you hear about this? This is hot. I'm excited about this one as I am about LogoFAIL. Like, this is awesome. And this is the guy. So what he says, in 2016, I published keystroke injection vulnerabilities in wireless mice and keyboards from 17 vendors. This is the dude that found mouse jacking.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, basically, I was bored, so I started looking at Bluetooth. And I didn't know it. And he says right in this article on GitHub, he's like, I didn't know much about Bluetooth, so I just started learning. I'm like, I love you. This is hacking at its finest. Like, this is, yes, hacking. So anyway, fast forward. He's like, well, he like learns Bluetooth. So this is like in a movie, right? Where in a kung fu movie, a person doesn't know kung fu and they kill his family and he goes off in the woods and he starts training, and then they show like 67 seconds of training scenes, maybe 2 minutes of training scenes, and then he's a kung fu master, right? So this is like the part in the story of here where he's like, I didn't know Bluetooth, I didn't know kung fu. Now it's like Matrix, I know kung fu, right? And he's like, well, turns out I can hack Bluetooth, and on Android, Linux, iOS, and macOS, I can pretend to be your keyboard and inject keystrokes without authorization. I'm like, oh my God, the hilarity, the shenanigans that we could have with this one, Bill. I mean, holy shenanigans, Batman.
Yeah, that flipper device probably is going to get a lot more, a lot more dangerous here pretty soon, right? When you can run ducky scripts just
Over Bluetooth.
Over Bluetooth, right?
Good Lord, there is going to be a day when we can do that, and hopefully it's soon because I'm excited.
Ooh.
Yeah, well,
I'm Rickrolling everyone, dude. Everyone gets you get a Rickroll, and you get a Rickroll.
So one of the things that I found really interesting in this article, and I didn't really dig in very deep, but one of the things he said about Mac OS is it was anybody correct me if I'm wrong, but like it only works if you have paired your Magic Keyboard to your phone.
Yeah. So vulnerable when Bluetooth is enabled and a Magic Keyboard has been paired with the phone or computer. I think he uses past tense has been, which is kind of interesting. Doesn't mean currently paired, mean has been paired, which is kind of interesting. Linux requires that Bluetooth is discoverable or connectable, which is not usually the case, right? Android is the most vulnerable, in my opinion. Android devices are vulnerable whenever Bluetooth is enabled. WTF, Android? Seriously? Good Lord.
Yeah, we should think about having him on, come and talking about this. I'd be really interested to hear more about like how he went about finding this. Like your whole download kung fu thing. That'd be a pretty cool story to hear from that. Because I know that when MouseJack came out, like that was something that I built a bunch of little devices that would just what was it, the NRF whatever it was. To be able to do that, right?
Of course you did.
Yeah, right.
Is there?
Man, yeah, keep that guy away from my keyboards.
Right?
So I had a question on this one. I guess it's now been more than a few weeks ago. A friend of mine was showing me the attack you can do on your phone from your Flipper Zero, where it's offering to pair, your phone offers to pair with whatever the hell. And is this the same sort of thing?
No.
It sounds really similar, but I'm not so sure.
The BLE spamming is Bluetooth low energy.
Okay.
And that affects iOS, Windows, and Android. And has a byproduct of affecting other devices, I'm told. Someone told me that their hearing aids are affected with Bluetooth low energy spamming. Larry says his people reporting their insulin monitors are being affected by it as well. This is more Bluetooth classic, so like you're pairing a keyboard to it, which is not low energy. That's Bluetooth classic. Okay. I wish Larry were here to. I'd love to hear Larry's thoughts on that. Larry's actually at a SANS event this week, but yeah.
Yeah, Larry would be really good to hear that. But another thing that separates this from that BLE spam is the ability to inject keystrokes, right? So
right.
Even better.
Yeah, that's going to be
freaking awesome.
Not only can be annoying, but I can totally pwn your entire device because I can enter commands on it. Like it's basically remote shell on these devices. But again, an iOS-based device or Mac has to have a Magic Keyboard that has previously been paired to it. Linux has to be in discoverable mode, which would then.
I wonder if it's any Bluetooth keyboard have had to have been paired to a Mac, or if it's only. And so, like, my interest is like, Is it only because of Magic Keyboard, or is it any Bluetooth keyboard, right? It'd be interesting to see and hear what that limitation is. Like, why is that? There has to be a very distinct answer to that question.
I think because my guess is because the Magic Keyboard I don't think requires any authentication. Like I have a recent Bluetooth keyboard from Logitech that I use on like an iPad and a phone and a couple things. And to pair it, you have to type in the code on the keyboard. It actually comes up on screen with type 185623 or whatever. Whereas a Magic Keyboard, I think just no code at all.
It's Magic.
Yeah,
it just works,
we may kind of pick on like why would you be using all these Bluetooth keyboards? I can give you one good reason, because I bought this really, really awesome mini keyboard. Right, it's about like yay big, and it has a mouse on it. It's the RII, you know that.
Is that the one that looks like a PS5 controller or something? Like it's almost got bulges on the sides.
No. This is just a flat rectangular square. Has a keyboard, a mouse. Then you flip it over, and I think it has some infrared capability and/or Bluetooth as a remote. Right. I basically bought it to have as a keyboard for like my Raspberry Pis that have screens on them and stuff. I don't know, just to have gadgets, right? Like it's just a gadget thing. But it has a dongle. I don't know if it also has I don't think this one has Bluetooth capability. It has a dongle, and I lost the dongle. So I'm like, God, shit. I'm like, can I use my hack RF and like reverse engineer a dongle? Can I? Is that possible?
Or you can buy one for $6 off Amazon. Right, like it's like you can spend a week hacking on it, or just
buy another one. Probably it's cheaper to buy another one. Exactly. It was more than $6, and I'm assuming they're keyed to each other, right? Because otherwise you'd be typing commands on other, like there's some kind of rolling code or key exchange that happens. So the dongle and the keyboard are paired to each other, obviously. Otherwise you'd be typing commands on other systems. So very similar to this hack, right? So I think this is cool. He says that he's going to present this at a conference, but he doesn't say which one. I'm intrigued. I am intrigued. So we'll just have to wait for more. There are fixes, though. What does he say about the fixes? We should cover that really quick, too. The Linux one was interesting. This was patched in 2020 and with the BlueStack, and in most Linux distributions, it was not enabled by default. So like the fix wasn't enabled by default, except for Chrome OS. Props for Chrome OS for being like one of the most resilient friggin' operating systems and platforms out there, quite honestly, right? But he said with Android, there's patches which I found vulnerable. Google says the fixes for the issues that affect Android 11 through 14 are available to impacted OEMs. All current supported Pixel devices will receive this fix via December over-the-air updates. At which time I was grabbing my Pixel and going, is there an update? Apply it. Yes, apply it. On my Android phone that I did not root, by the way. So, but that's interesting, though. I wonder if, because you got Pixel 2s running Android 10, I think with the capability to upgrade that to 11. I think my Pixel 2 I did update to 11, because I saved all my Pixel phones to hack stuff on them. So anyway. And what about macOS? Did Apple vulnerability reported to Apple? I'm not sure what the timeline is. It says it was reported. I'm not sure if they fixed it or not. That's probably why it hasn't released the exploits, because fixes haven't been rolled out. Good stuff, though.
It's the RII keyboard. Is that what you got?
Yes.
The RII i8 Plus or something? Yeah, you can't use it without the dongle.
Correct.
And the only guy on eBay that has replacement dongles is sold out. Sorry.
I wonder how he does a replacement dongle. Do you have to repair it with the dongle? Or is it a universal dongle?
Yeah, no, apparently the guy who sold it, who bought it, the one who sold it to him, sent him an entirely new keyboard, and the new dongle does not hook up to the old keyboard. So you're going to have to buy yourself a new one.
Ooh, ouch.
Or spend 6 months creating a universal dongle, which would be an interesting security research, but anyway.
Paul, for a $29 keyboard, to spend 6 months of your life for creating a universal Bluetooth 2.4 gigahertz.
No, I don't think it's
universal for
Bluetooth.
that model of keyboard.
Correct.
I'm going to say probably not a good choice of your time use.
Yeah,
but,
probably.
Hey, well,
Could be fun though.
He's not your mommy. Do what you want.
Right?
fuck yeah.
I'll do what I want. If I don't waste my life reverse
When you
engineering,
live under my roof, you'll follow my fucking rules,
you're
okay?
going to reverse engineer when I tell you to reverse engineer, all right?
He's touching me.
She's looking out my window.
Hey,
Oh my
speaking of
God.
Android, did you catch the thing about auto spill?
What's auto spill?
So basically, there's a way with the web view with the password managers on the Android where you can like intercept the passwords coming out of your password vault and use them other ways.
I didn't
You
see
typically
that.
need a bogus app on there, but that was presented at Black Hat Europe. That they basically found that most password managers are vulnerable to this. I mean, LastPass, Keeper, and 1Password have made some updates, and Google published guidance for password managers on like do it this way, not that way.
Interesting.
But yeah, I mean, it's like you finally get the user to use a password manager, right? And then it freaking gets intercepted in, through the web interface or the web view interface. It's like, oh my gosh, we teach the user to write the way and they still get shot in the drive-through.
Well, I had one about Android that the researcher discovered a new lock screen bypass bug for Android 14 and 13. Now, I'm still trying to understand how this works, and it seems like the only example is a video where the person's speaking what I believe is Spanish, and with running water in the background that makes me want to pee. I'm serious, dude. I went to watch the video. I'm like, first, I don't understand what you're saying, and there's no subtitles or anything. And then I'm like, why is there running water in the background? And then I'm like, nah, now I got to pee. I got to pause the video and come back. I don't understand what they're driving at, but the articles that were written about it says it has something to do with Google Maps and driving mode. Like you're more vulnerable to this if driving mode is activated. And if you don't have driving mode activated, an attacker can access your recent favorites and locations, as well as your contacts. They can also share your phone, location of your phone in real time with any of your contacts, right? Because that's a thing. You can do that. You can share your location and set it for a certain time period, right? And then if you do have driving mode activated, an attacker can chain together this exploit with another one to access photos stored on your device, which they would see a lot of my memes that are not appropriate for all audiences. You can publish them or add them as a profile image to your Google account. They'd have a really nice set of options for changing my Google account.
What's the latest Android? What version is the latest Android? I'm not an Android user, so I don't know.
I believe it's 14.
14. It like just came out.
Yeah, so not being an Android user, what this kind of feels like to me is, we've all seen it before. Like if you pick up an iPhone, you can, take pictures on somebody's, on somebody's camera.
Not that you would do that, Bill.
Right. Well, it's
He's heard rumors.
Find a phone. That's what it kind of feels like to me. Like I don't know what driving mode is in Android, but it sounds like it just maybe doesn't fully actually lock out the phone. You're an Android user, right, Paul? What's the driving mode like?
I think driving mode is specific to Google Maps, I believe.
Oh, okay.
And so if you're not driving and you load Google Maps, it gives you a more detailed interface that you can interact with a bunch of things. If you flip it into driving mode, it looks more like remember the Garmin GPSs? Like it looks more like a GPS for when you're driving. Simplifies the interface and gives you directions and a more zoomed in kind of thing on the map.
Right. So you can more effectively drive and not have to look so closely at the app
Correct.
to figure out what the hell's going on.
Correct. But obviously enables or disables other features too.
Right.
And I bet you do have Android somewhere in your environment, Bill, would be my guess.
Oh, well, I'm not saying I don't, but like you, I've got a drawer full of old Android phones I keep around to hack on, but I don't really care what Android version
Right.
they're
Well,
running.
I was also referring to like I started up my treadmill, and it came out, and it's like Android comes up because my treadmill runs Android. So like all your TVs, Android TVs, like Android is everywhere, and it's like it's a hacker's playground is when I looked at the Android TV stuff, and recently I took my Pixel 3 XL. It's on social media. If you're following me on social media, I kind of talked about, I gave hints as to all the painstaking tasks that I had to go through to get Kali NetHunter installed on my Pixel 3. There was lots of rooting, bootloader unlocking, and boot loops. I got boot looped. That's when the phone just like keeps rebooting, like can never boot into the operating system and just infinitely reboots, which was awesome. Luckily, I was able to stop it and go into fast boot. Like there's all kinds of fascinating. Like Android it's fascinating, dude. It's fascinating. And I just wanted to get more familiar. I mean, like I got NetHunter installed. I was like, cool, great. I'm like, now what? I'm like, I don't know, like squirrel on to the next day. Like I did it like really just for the challenge, right?
Yeah, take a screen. You just take a screenshot.
Like got it.
Post it on Instagram and like
like it's a flag, like my flag is I got it installed. And it's funny, like if you Google for like, what should I do with Kali NetHunter? Like someone tell me like what are the cool things you do with it? Every result you get is here's how to install it because it's so hard to install. But I do recommend you go through it because it's fun and you learn a lot about Android, right? Which was really my goal. So, but yeah, the security is not. I will say though, if your Android is encrypted and you forget the PIN number, like that's one part. Like you're really. I mean, there's some edge cases there, but like pretty much like you're screwed, right? Like, yeah, you could wipe it and start over, but like if you care about your data and your Android phone is encrypted and you forget your PIN number, like pretty much you're screwed, is from what I understand, right?
I know.
Well, I think that's what encryption promises us, right?
Right,
Like
yes.
that's what we would want.
That part works really well, right?
So I was watching a YouTube video the other day, and it was installing Android on your iPhone, and
Really?
it was about an hour long, and it only worked on I can't remember exactly. It was an older version of an iPhone, like an iPhone 12, 10, something, I don't remember. So what's funny about this is, so I watched the entire hour-long video because it was interesting. Like, how do you get a Linux kernel running on an iPhone? Like, how do you build it? How do you do those things?
Is it like well, it's not like a cheroot. It must be some kind of like virtual environment. Because like an Android, like it's kind of like just a Linux cheroot that you can run other images. I think that's what Magisk is like. You're creating other images, and I'm still trying to understand exactly how this works. But I believe they actually use the term cheroot because you're running in almost like a, not virtualized, but like a different environment, right?
But at the end of the 1 hour long YouTube video, the guy had Android running on an iPhone, but nothing worked, right? So it's like. Yes. He couldn't get anything to run, and so as you're telling the story about NetHunter, I was like, yeah, I've heard that one before, right?
Right. Someone commented on social media when I put out there like I did this, and here's a bunch of stuff I did, and what did they say? Sometimes it's the journey, not the journey is the destination. That's what they say. Like, yes, you summarized that nicely. Yes. What else we got this week?
Some great stuff in chat, by the way.
What's that, Josh?
Some great stuff in chat, by the way, if you're not watching it. Shep Pusted has gone insane over chat, and there's actually some interesting pieces in there.
Oh,
Apple has yet to respond to that vulnerability, apparently.
The Bluetooth one?
Yeah. Tesla's recalling. Oh, by the way, your Tesla has a recall, right?
Most cars have a recall.
Yeah, your car has a recall to fix your autopilot. All of them do.
Oh, yeah, because you know why? The autopilot is friggin' dangerous, dude. One of the first times I used it, I hit like a construction zone where like the lines in the highway were like kind of all over the place. And if I didn't grab the wheel, I was going right in the Jersey barrier, dude. I was like, oh, that's wonderful. Not doing that again. Thanks.
And we're done.
And we're done with autopilot.
Well, but autopilot's useful. They've done so much porn with autopilot.
Well, I don't have the full. I still have to have my hands on the steering wheel. I have the I was cheap when I leased a car autopilot, and I didn't pay for the fully automated driving. I have the one that does my hands have to be on the wheel. I don't have to move the wheel.
How much autopilot have you used?
Not a lot. Not a lot.
So good choice on being cheap.
Right. I do want the acceleration boost, but I don't want to pay the $2,000 for it, and I'm being cheap.
Oh, the Lunatic? Is that...
no, I don't have an S that has the Lunatic speed. I have a Y.
Ludicrous.
Yeah, I have a Y, and on the Y you can pay to go from 4.70 to 60 to 4.10 to 60, which I'm still trying to convince my wife that it's totally worth it. And like my friend KF says it's worth it, so therefore it's like it's worth it, right? Like we need this. I'm still working on it. So.
Yeah.
What was her last response when you showed her what it could do now and said, but it could be so much faster, huh?
Yeah, she still said, "Get the fuck out of here." To summarize, that's the response.
Listen, Paul, I'm going to give you the best advice of your life. Don't listen to your wife. Just buy what you want, man.
Right? Like, yeah, that's like from your experience, right. Bill, I will take that under consideration.
That's right. Yeah.
Bill, how many divorces do you have?
0, well, and I want to keep it that. I have 0, and I want to keep it that way.
Yeah, I've completed my first. I've completed my first, and I don't care how many more I got going. Like I'm gonna live my life. I'm gonna live my life. Right? Like so I was kind of interested. I was interested with the last guest. We were talking about the Teslas and understanding the stop sign. And what would happen if we were to like print off a big traffic light sticker with a green light and shove it on a stop sign? What's the Tesla going to do? I wonder.
Well, they're doing that kind of. They were doing that kind of experimentation in, I believe it was California with Cruise. And they're kind of picking on the automated vehicles, making them stop by putting traffic cones and doing other kind of like shenanigans like that. But then, of course, it all came to fruition when did they kill people? I don't think they hit some. There was incidents, and I believe California had to stop the program for Cruise, which I was kind of sad. I mean, yeah, it's sad. Like I want to see technology. I want to see it be successful and move forward. But obviously, people's safety is more important. But I was sad that the technology didn't work because I think Cruise is doing a great job. They have some super freaking talented engineers working at Cruise. If you care to do the research, you will probably recognize some of those people that do that. But I'm rooting for Cruise. I hope they can fix it and restart the program. And overcome those issues, and certainly they have amazing people working on those issues at Cruise specifically.
So speaking of killing people, your article, the number 5, dangerous vulnerability in fleet management software, it's just incredibly interesting.
Great segue. Now, is this? I want to say, Bill, this is like a rental car company. Is this like? Really look too... Yeah. I was curious. Like, I was reading the article and I was super distracted because I was like, "Wait, you didn't say who uses this technology, right? Like, what? It's like a why should I care, right? Like, if this is used to control vehicles like that are driving around in the middle of the friggin' desert where no one's around, like, okay, that's one thing. But is this a rental car company in a populated city that install? And I think this is the case. We talked about this on our previous show. Years ago, probably, but inside rental cars, they'll put the vehicle management. I think it's called Fleet, right? It interfaces with OBD2 and can control the entire car. And they use it for monitoring. I don't know exactly what they use it for, right? Remote assistance might be one thing. I don't know.
Well, did you dig into the vulnerability at all? Like, so
it's like the way scary, the article dude.
The way the article was written, they were like, hey, one simple search on Shodan, and was like, well, I need to figure out what that simple search is, right? I need to know, right? And so it turns out it's an MQTT server that's publicly accessible. So when your car is online and it's connected, it exposes an MQTT server that has full access to the CAN bus. And so, like, I'll let you know, if I'm not going to give out the keyword or whatever, but it is pretty easy to figure out if you just start looking or whatever. But
if you could signal message that, thanks.
Right. Yeah. But what's really interesting is if you do go look at Shodan, you were to figure it out or whatever. Not only is it so I don't know if you've ever interfaced with an MQTT, which probably you have, Paul, just given the IoT stuff.
My coworker said something about, we're talking about MQTT, and he's like, if you have a system and you discover that it has MQTT, he's like, it's a field day. Like, gloves are off. Like, vulnerabilities exist. It's the downfall of IoT and connected devices.
Yes, because you can just ask MQTT, tell me all your endpoints, right?
Right.
And so on Shodan, all of those API endpoints are just there, right? You can just see. And so
it's like universal plug and play. Like, it just wants it. It's a protocol. It's out there. No authentication, authorization. Yep. Just tell me what to do. You want firewall rules? Sure. Great. I'll write some firewall rules for you.
Yeah. Full access to the CAN bus over the internet. What could possibly go wrong?
It's basically right. It's giving you remote control over a vehicle. I mean, it might as well be an RC car, and you have the controller for it at that point.
Yep, and so for those of you guys watching, listening, and it sounds like the vendor doesn't think it's a big deal.
No.
And they've ignored the warning from the researchers.
But not even just like ignored the warning. Like, they've gone through great lengths to ignore every warning from everyone, because the researcher, I held on to this for like a year and a half, put it in perspective, like at Eclipsium, I believe, like, don't quote me on this, but I'm 99% sure our disclosure policy is 90 days, right? And I'm not going to say we don't make exceptions, because we would absolutely, I want to speak for the founders of Eclipsium, right? But like, in my experience, we were pretty good about giving people ample opportunity to patch and like make exceptions. We're being good citizens here. This researcher held on it for a year and a half, from what I read from the article. He worked with CERT, and CERT was unable to connect with the vendor. So here is a vendor, and the CERT coordination center is reaching out to you going, you've got a problem. Like, this just isn't some researcher or company or whatever. Like, this is basically the U.S. government, like a funded arm of the U.S. government that is trying to do good, is telling you, like, they didn't respond to them. So they didn't name the vendor when they presented this at a conference last month, even though they waited more than a year and a half, tried multiple forms of contact, went through 2 CVE naming authorities, which could also not contact the vendor. Which, that's crazy.
Wait. Wow. Let's be clear. They got tickets at the vendor, service tickets, support tickets opened.
Did. Yes.
So they were able to contact the vendor. It's not that the vendor was not able to be contacted. It's the vendor didn't give a crap.
Correct. Because they also said in the article, like, Cyberscoop is the one that I linked to. I think Cyberscoop actually said in the article they reached out to him, created a ticket. Cyberscoop opened with DC. They said the vendor didn't respond to multiple requests. A support ticket that Cyberscoop opened with DCC was closed with an email response noting the company escalated the matter internally, and if we have any further feedback, we'll notify you. There is no vulnerability here.
It's because their dashboard needs the MQTT service to be available, right?
Right. But hold on. But the researchers didn't name the vendor last month, but then in the article, it wasn't until just before Thanksgiving that CERT gave the green light to publish the details. So the use of Series 4 remains unclear, but DCT boasts more than 119,000 devices tracked in more than 49 different countries. So they did leak the vendor, or disclose the vendor, I should say. So like cat's out of the bag.
Yeah, I'm just from my research, searching you have to do a little bit more digging than just searching the vendor, right? Like, you know, but yeah, this is a big problem. Like, they're gonna learn a lesson on this one, I think.
Well, here's the problem. It said in the article there's 119,000 vehicles connected through this. Okay, this is not any one vendor. This is all the vendors.
Well, no, this is the supply chain, right? I would.
Well, sorry.
Should I venture to guess that I'm guessing here. Multiple rental car agencies have implemented this technology into it, and showed-hand searches for it are not just like one implementation, it's everyone's implementation of this vendor's technology that lives inside the vehicle, that's internet connected, that is on Shodan. And so all it takes is for one person out there like Bob to go, I can write a Python script that shuts down all 119,000 devices all at once. Oops. Which would be bad.
Yeah,
like, don't do that. Don't do that. Because when you're driving and your car shuts off, other drivers might not be akin to that, and you might cause car accidents. Like, don't do that. That is bad. Bad.
As we said, we escalated it internally, and we'll get back to you.
Right. I mean, just turn the windshield wipers on or something. No, don't do that. Like, don't. That's permission, right? Anyway.
Oh.
I think it's funny, Paul, that you think it's perfectly reasonable to inject keystrokes over Bluetooth without any permission, but stopping a car, don't do that. Like, you need to pick.
You shouldn't do anything. But I was saying before that if I had permission, that's the part you missed. If I had permission, I would inject keystrokes into.
I would do both. I would inject keystrokes and shut down cars, no permission needed. I'll do it. I'll do it right now.
No, you need to. Don't do that.
I'm only kidding.
He's not. He's not though.
He's really not. That's the problem.
He's just telling you he's kidding. So all you kids out there don't go do that stuff. But like totally, as soon as the show ends, gloves come off. Shenanigans. That's what we're. Yeah. All right. Enough of the car stuff. What else are we talking about?
Did you do Did you do story one?
Oh no! Tell us about Sieges. This keeps coming up at work, and I'm like, I really thought it was spelled like SEA.
No. It's pronounced Sieges. It's CJS.
I thought it was some like underwater discovery mapping software, like GIS, like Sieges. No, it's not. It's totally not justice,
information services or security or whatever. Anyway, it's about criminal justice information. So it's about sentencing, prisoner information, inmate information. It's about trial information, all that kind of stuff. And it's basically.
So wait, the FBI has to make this data available to state and local law enforcement. All the way around? Actually, do they populate it from? No.
They make extracts of this data available. But this is basically about how you move data. For example, if you're a law firm practice management system, are you handling your data in CJIS compliant format? Okay, which is for criminal law. Let's be clear. Okay. But this is basically all the stuff that's about a case, all the stuff that's about a sentencing decision. So the courthouse, their systems have to be CJIS compliant.
I see. So it's a compliance. It's a compliance standard for criminal. Data associated with criminal law in criminal cases.
Criminal justice, exactly. Yeah, that's correct.
I mean, what I'm seeing here is they are now actively enforcing some of the 853 controls, particularly the system integrity ones.
Yep.
That are kind of.
But they're saying for CJIS is saying that you need to abide by NIST 853.
Right. Which is interesting. Within CJIS, that's fine, but when you're talking about a non-federal system, you really should be pointing to 800-171, but because it's federal data you're protecting. but whatever. But yeah, they're, people should be, how many people are making sure the firmware integrity is right?
The federal courts actually are under this as well, Lee. So it is federal. There's state as well. Don't get me wrong, but the primary agency for this is federal court system.
Right. So, and that's fine. I'm just making sure that we're apples and apples. Subcontractor, non-federally owned systems would fall under 171. But if it's all federal systems, apples.
It's not all federal systems. There's a lot of systems that use this that are state court or, but the primary sort of target of this was federal court system.
But I like this because 853, is it SI-7 says perform an integrity check of software, firmware, and information systems. I like that. I happen to work for a vendor that provides an integrity check of software and firmware.
Define integrity check. All it means is that it's working right now.
Well, I define that differently. Integrity means multiple things to me. If it's you picked on something that I talk a lot about at my day job and spend a lot of time thinking about. And to me, integrity is, are you running what you should be running? In other words, if you're running firmware, is it the firmware that came from the vendor that you should be running? Integrity is, has it been tampered with or backdoored in some way? Right. Integrity is valid, also,
except does it mean the latest one?
Subcomponent B is, yes, you may be running the firmware or software intended from the vendor, but does it have extra stuff in it, right? And one of my coworkers, I think it was Nate, said this to me. He's like I want to know if, I'm running firmware on my firewall, everything's great, but there's like a PHP backdoor shell. Well, it should fail integrity because it's got some extra thing in there that's giving an attacker a shell, so it's got something else. So that, to me, there's like two different types of failing integrity. The other part of integrity that I also really like is baselining. Today, you're running firmware, and it looks like this. Tomorrow, you're running firmware, but it looks different, and I didn't apply an update from the vendor.
Hey, Josh, did you catch the first word in the first paragraph above the SI2 flaw remediation part of this document?
SI2.
ECLYPSIUM.
No, it's an Eclipsium press release. Let's be clear. It's an Eclipsium press release with some very good information.
Yes,
but it's an Eclipsium press release, and that's fine.
Yeah,
but here's the problem. It's not.
Yeah, go ahead.
The person who wrote this, and Paul, I'm just checking. It's not you.
No, it's one of my coworkers.
Okay, they're pushing a little too hard on what Eclipsium does. For example, an integrity check. Let's go back to integrity for a minute. All right, integrity is the firmware that you're running right now, and it's software, firmware, and information systems. But we'll concentrate on firmware for a second. Is the firmware you're running right now the one that came from the vendor? That's what you just defined it as.
Correct.
Doesn't have anything extra, hasn't been modified, doesn't have anything lost. It's the exact same as it came bit for bit. Okay, we're on the same page there.
Yep.
Except that does not include. Is it the newest? Is it the latest? Is it patched? Okay, that doesn't.
That's different. That. To me, that's vulnerability management.
Okay, valid.
And we help with that too. I mean, but okay, yes, that's vulnerability management. That's a different component, right?
I can see that.
You need both, right? You need integrity and a vulnerability management component as well. Because, like, to me, a vulnerability is not necessarily indicative of integrity failure, right?
And yet, a couple of paragraphs down, but they do not have the vast industry database needed to verify the integrity of what firmware should be present within devices and components.
Correct.
So should is the latest.
Should is the latest. What do you mean by that?
You should be running the latest version.
You should be, yes.
So that's not the integrity check.
No, that's vulnerability management. That's if.
So in other words, your coworker. I mean, I'm not.
No, I'm
nitpicking.
But we're talking about from a threat landscape perspective, backdoors and tampering versus vulnerability management.
And so then at SI2, they do have number of days listed after the release of an update to install the security relevant software and firmware updates. We're on the same page there. So it's inclusive there. But my problem there is that the timing is horrible. Mediums are 60 days. Dear God. And frankly, the defining security relevant is a little scary because I've known organizations to define security relevant as whatever they decide is security relevant. And they don't do it very well, typically.
It's worse than that. You start getting up to like the NIST definition of security relevant software, it's the OS. Game over. You can't do those medium and lows that fast. Actually, what is it? If a system responds to a ping, it's considered a low vulnerability.
Oh yeah, ICMP is. Oh God, I'm gonna hurt you.
The compliance borders are treacherous.
So what's missing in here is the accepted level of risk.
Thank you. That Lee, you just crystallized it beautifully. It's not just about what firmware you're running. It's not just about have you updated it within 30 days because it's a high or whatever. It's about at what level of risk is, and 853 has low, mod, high. Okay.
Right.
Where are you in this?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
and
that's
the fact,
in my experience, that's subjective. I mean, we just talked about, but we just talked about with LogoFAIL.
Subjectivity,
right?
You lose.
It's bad. You lose because look at we just talked about with LogoFAIL. Some scored it as a 4.4. Some scored it as an 8.2. Like it's the severity ratings are inherently subjective.
Yes, but there's another layer in here because these are federal systems. They've been authorized to operate at a certain level, so whatever level in 853, and with certain risks in them. And the person the authorizing official may have authorized them not to deal with medium and low vulnerabilities, only focus on critical high, and you're good to go. But there's a whole process behind this. This is not arbitrary, and there's a lot of, but basically that all gets laid out as part of the approval to operate. That's what's missing from this is the context. Where are the highs and lows? Where are the guardrails on the system? Absolutely, if you've agreed to patch the lows in 90 days, you better be freaking patching them. That's not it. And regardless of that, you still need help. Like the Eclipsium platform operates. I mean, this stuff is not easy, and there's not enough of us going around. You got to automate the snot out of everything you can. But like I said, you got to have that context. Don't turn the knob where it doesn't need to be.
Compliance is tricky because again, a lot of it is subjective, right?
Yeah. Yes. In about 11 months, I'll be out of the business.
What? You're retiring?
I'm retiring.
Dude, you vacation enough now. What is retirement actually going to mean to you?
I'll never see my house again.
Yeah.
Damn straight. All right, I'm moving in. I mean, as long as you're going to give it up,
all right, we got a room for you.
We're gonna, we'll move the podcast to Lee's house. That's where we're all gonna move. Do you live? But you don't live anywhere near Tyler, though, right?
No, he's about 250 miles away.
Yeah.
Close enough. We can take day trips over there, look for USB drive. Millions of dollars.
There we go. So
300 miles. I think Josh drove 300 miles to get to the studio.
I did.
Yeah, right? Isn't that about 300 miles?
Back the next day.
Yeah.
Holy crap, good for you. That's like what we used to do Disney trips.
I drove up on Wednesday, spent the evening. Spent the evening at the studio, went to the hotel, slept until 5, and got on the road.
Good for you.
Got home by
5-hour drive.
Yeah.
Oh, I wanted to just quickly talk about my story number 2. We were mentioning firmware earlier, but EMBA is a really cool project. I've got a post coming out that we posted to Eclipsium's blog about EMBA. We've been working with and testing that tool internally. It's a framework for doing automated firmware analysis. So if you've ever used something like Firmidine or FACT or OFRAC or Binwalk and those kind of tools, EMBA is like the latest iteration of that. It comes from 2 security researchers that work for Siemens, and they've just done an amazing job. It's a little bit tricky to get it going, and I think some of the things we're adding to the post now are some tips on how to get it going. Basically, you feed it firmware, and it automates all those tedious things that we do manually. It's very much akin to like our AI discussion, right? Like it's totally like automating the part of my job that can be automated. Now, Is it going to analyze your firmware, identify a vulnerability, and write an exploit? No. But is it going to automate a whole bunch of the process that you would normally go through to get to that point? Yes. And that's what I love about it. So it's become a really, really cool tool for us to use. They've even got kind of like they call it like an enterprise version, but really it's like a collaborative thing called Embark. So you can set up like one instance and share amongst multiple researchers, and it starts analyzing firmware and share your results. So like for us, this is amazing. Is it perfect? No. Does it have issues? Yes. Does it take in some firmware and just spin for 72 hours? Yep, we've experienced that, right? Does it miss stuff? Absolutely. Does it catch stuff that was like, wow, that would have taken me like a really long time to Google how to do that, get the tools and like figure it out? Like certain firmware, it's like, oh, I know how to decrypt that. And it goes off because there was some like esoteric post somewhere about how to decrypt that firmware. It's like, oh yeah, I got you. Like I'll go do that. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Does it choke on other encrypted firmware? Yep. One of our researchers is like, oh no, this is like how you decrypt it. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. So again, it's not like anyone can do firmware reverse engineering now and find exploits.
No.
Not really, but it helps automate a bunch of the firmware analysis stuff that I've been involved with for a really long time. So it's really great at unpacking, does a great job of unpacking. Yes, it uses binwalk and unblob, but it's a little smarter about it. Some of the things I like that it does is it'll determine the architecture that the firmware was built for, and it will if it can extract the file system, which it does pretty well. It'll get all the files that, like, if it's built for MIPS, it'll run QEMU and run all those binaries and just grab like their version string and then go compare that to the CVE database that it downloads and goes, oh, this is running all this older software that has all these CVEs for it. Like, well, you just saved me like a ton of time, right? Like it's an awesome way to kind of get you from I'm looking at this firmware going to I'm looking at specific things, and like I sat around for 8 hours and did something else while it churned through the firmware. Some firmwares, it does take a long time. You got to give it a ton of resources to run. So I'll have a post coming about it soon. They just released a new version of their Embark kind of add-on to it that does that, and they're constantly doing updates. We've actually been working with some of the team members and giving them updates and asking for things and helping fix things. So I just want to encourage everyone. What I love about this project is, as one thing we talk about on the show, right? How when you look at firmware and like you lift the hood up and you're like, oh my God, that's really, really ugly. We need to make sure that more of us are doing this, reporting back vulnerabilities and upping the ante on all of this firmware stuff, which, quite frankly, is mostly older, really vulnerable software, as we've talked about. So if we can use this tool to get more people doing it and raise awareness about it, that's one of the things I like about it too.
Right. So actually, one of the things in one of my other articles was about open source and, the trade-offs between, the paid versus the open source because it comes with a mortgage. And I'm thinking, this is the positive side. By making this available, it's like more people are not held back because they don't have funding for the firmware analysis tool. Here it is.
Right.
Go have that. I think this is really cool.
It'll find password hashes, so it like does some fuzzy search for password hashes, and it'll use John the Ripper and try and crack them.
Right.
Does it do it 100% of the time? No, like sometimes I have to take the hash and I have to use Hashcat and with my custom dictionary. And you can load a custom dictionary in it, but like it's great things. Like this is great.
I'd love to see how the uptick takes because it seems really useful.
Yeah, and I guess why I'm excited is like there's been a lot of projects that have tried to do this, and like EMBA does it really well. Like it's really kind of like the next iteration that has me excited because it does it super well.
So when are we going to see Paul's podcast on building your own firmware analysis lab or firmware hacking lab using open source tools?
Yes.
That is a freaking amazing technical segment series idea, Paul. Hint, hint.
I've done some of it already.
I had to say it before I forgot.
Yeah, like I've done some stuff on Android on how to pick that apart, and I've done some stuff on UEFI I did the last time I think I did that was for John Strand. I did using open source tools to enumerate your UEFI firmware. Some of that stuff's already
Including how to build your lab?
How to build your lab. If you're going to run this stuff, like EMBA, you're going to need a lot of CPU resource, a lot of horsepower, CPU and RAM, and disk space too. Mm-hmm. Build a massive
I'm just saying,
system.
there's a lot to unpack there. You could, no pun intended, you could probably do some more with it. It just, like I said, this is a hot field. It's very cool. And I'm glad to see more, I'm just glad to see the contribution because, it's worth it.
I'm looking at those new i9s, 24 core, 196 gigs of RAM, M.2 storage, PCIe 5. I think it's a PCIe 5.
That's not open source, Paul. I'm sorry.
Dude, those systems are pretty hot. Could be my next system. I'd have to downgrade, though, from 256 gigs of RAM to 196. I don't know how I feel about that.
Is anybody nearby Paul and can smack him just a little bit? Just a little bit.
I can't part with that. Like I might need that. I mean, it's the difference between running like 17 VMs versus 18 and 17 Chrome windows, all with 100 tabs. I need. If I want that available to me. I don't want to be limited by my system.
How many of our listeners are thinking first world problem?
First world problems. Yes.
And I totally get it. I would be with you, Paul, because I am that nerdy. I'd be thinking about, but wait, I can't do these things if I turn this down. But it's still. So actually, I wanted to hit. I'm imagining, like last week we talked about the Holiday Hack Challenge.
We did.
Which I am bummed I missed it, but not that bummed because I was up in Machu Picchu. So don't cry for me. But I found this article on the President's Cup cybersecurity competition from CISA, which is for feds and federal contractors and stuff, which has a practice range and solutions from last season, got virtual machine hot sauce. Really sounded cool. Just, yet another place to sit there and do a competition, teams or individually. That's my story number 5. And like I said, I just thought we need more stuff like that. We should cover those as a feel-good segment. I guess it's not, it's news, but it's not bad news. It's actually good news. So take that. Right?
It kind of sounds like CCDC.
Yeah, it does.
Which I agree. We need more of. I think there's a lot of virtual CTFs, which I'm all for. Ed does an amazing one, obviously. But actually getting people together too is really cool. I miss CCDC style competition. So
CCDC is a fantastic thing. Mubix ran the MACCDC for years, and along with MetaCTF, and I'm waiting to hear how that is handled. Apparently, the owner of the name took it back and kicked them out.
Oh.
So we'll see what happens there. Hopefully everything worked out okay. But along with that, he's got a lot of past work that he's done that any CCDC he would be probably very happy to give to them. Just saying.
That'd be another fun segment. Talk to some folks.
Paul, grab Mubix, bring him on how he builds CCDCs.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. Let's go to password 123456.
Absolutely.
So Pentagrid did some research, and the research is interesting. But what I pulled from this was this quote: "The attacker can now connect to the phone." So these are, I believe, VoIP phones. The attacker can now connect to the phone via secure shell as an admin user with the password 123456. No authentication was needed to get here. Still can't believe today. I only talked about this in the last episode too, but the authentication on embedded devices it's horrible. It's terrible. Why can't we? Ed SCOTUS years ago now, by the way, this reminds me of this. We were talking about I don't even think, we're calling it IoT when he said this? I'm not even sure. I was like, what do we do about this problem, Ed? Like, what's the rub? And he was like, look, one thing is we could come up with a standard for embedded devices or IoT systems to implement a management framework and secure authentication. It would be a huge win. And man, was he right, because even since the last time he said that years ago, we cover every single week how the attackers got in. Well, how'd they get in? Well, there was a PLC or there was a router or there was something, and it had some kind of management protocol, whether that's a web interface, SSH, Telnet, whatever it is. It had default password. Like, really? As long as our security is centered around, like, can be defeated by default passwords, and they're still available today, like, we're just failing miserably. Miserably. The technology exists.
Come on, Paul.
Technology exists today to wipe out passwords. Technology exists today to create a secure management framework where these devices could phone home to the cloud and not allow people to log in. Why do you need to log in directly to these devices? There's much better ways to do this, more secure ways that don't require distributing a default password. Even if you just did the thing like many projects have done and go, there is no default password when you provision the device, you got to give it a password. Or better yet, why not use a key? Like, how long has like key-based authentication been available for SSH? Since like 20 plus years, at least.
Actually, got a question for you, Paul. Why do default passwords exist? I'm being serious.
I think it's usability. My assessment over the past many years is they shipped in this way because it's easy, and because it easy for the user, usability, and they don't have to create a support ticket, right? So I ship you a device, and I distribute a documentation and a manual for that, and I go, look, when you get this device, you go into your browser, and you type this URL, and you can enter the username of admin and the password of admin. And it's easy. And it's everyone that gets this device. And they're like, yeah, you should probably change that. But like, no one does. It's so silly. I'm talking about this for so many years. Why can't we fix it?
Well, yeah. But what's different now, particularly in the last couple of years, is that more and more stuff is exposed to the internet. 30 years ago, we were doing it, but the things we were doing it on, you couldn't reach them anyway, so the risk was low. But now, it's like, and particularly through the pandemic, everything's been exposed. I mean, what was that? Unitronics PLCs that are out there?
Yep.
With the default password of
1111. Yeah, we talked about that. Yep.
Yeah, and the issue to me, I mean, yeah, we should change that password, but the other issue is that there was a time you would never expose a PLC to the internet. Holy crap, you possibly make it unstable as all hell, but it's exposed. And to me, that's part of the problem. It's not just securing the passwords, which of course needs to be done, but we got to stop making everything so accessible. We need a path to it, but a secure path.
Right, but it's cheaper to do it that way, because what do you do otherwise?
Well, yeah.
I mean, if you have to have it go through a provisioning system, you have to set up that provisioning system or distribute that provisioning system, right? If you make it so someone has to set a password, maybe you're able to deploy it, but you haven't logged into it, and the first person to log in gets to set the password, right?
Right. Well, and you remember when we were early career sysadmins, and we got a system that got like 17 default passwords, and if you don't change them, it freaking works.
Right.
And now you start changing them. Boy, your ass could be in a sling so fast because you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, now your monitoring software doesn't work, can't log into them because you changed the default password.
Right, and it snowballs. And so I can understand the inertia behind not changing them, but we've got to get over it. But hey, I've been there, done that, and it was painful, but that's how you learn.
Right.
Sorry for the lecture. Or rant.
Not at all.
Mom, we don't patch log for shell either.
Yeah.
As long as that's been out, right? So Veracode actually did a study, and while there has been a massive effort to remediate Log4Shell. Chris Ng has some great thoughts. I liked his quotes from the article. He says, the bigger story at the 2-year anniversary, however, is there's still room for improvement. If Log4Shell was another example in a long series of wake-up calls to adopt more stringent open source security practices, the fact that more than 1 in 3 applications currently run vulnerable versions of Log4j shows there is more work to do. The major takeaway here is that organizations may not be aware of how much open source security risk they're exposing and how to mitigate it. It makes you wonder, when people know it's there, first of all, and then if you know it's there, how many just stick their head in the sand and go, yeah, we'll get to that someday. And here we are 2 years out, and I think it's something like 30% of the software they're analyzed still hasn't remediated it.
Right. Well, I told you about the developer I worked with that we were using the version 1 Log4j, which has vulnerabilities in it, but he wasn't using any of the stuff that was vulnerable. So he took the Log4j library because there was no money to update the app to use the newer versions of Log4j. He stripped out all the vulnerable methods and made a new jar file that didn't have any of the crap in it to be exploited. And it's fine.
I love that.
Yeah, Lee, I see that a lot too, and I think that that's probably not taken into consideration. And when I hear 1 in 4 apps, right? I see a lot of developers doing that with with the Log4j.
And I get that too. I feel that because I've been there, right? Updating a library can often mean a lot more work. If you can keep that same version and just go, I'm going to make it so it's not vulnerable anymore, that's a valid path in my opinion. Yeah. But it's still going to show as vulnerable when you scan the source code. Right.
Well, but that's where you have a documented exception, so you're off to the races. But like I said, it satisfied management because it was a 5-minute fix instead of however many months it would have taken to do the other way around.
Right.
And they were willing to accept the risk of fingerprinting the library, and we just put an exception into the scanner.
You just got to be sure you're not calling those vulnerable functions somewhere. But
they weren't even in the jar file anymore.
Well, but you got to make sure you're not trying to call those functions in other portions of the code, which should be a pretty easy search. Using modern tooling, again, and every application is different, but in applications when I was writing the Python application, I could do that pretty easily, right? In my IDE, I could go, I could actually search or go to the thing, show me all the things that call this thing, right? And it would bring up a list. That's it's been around for a long time in modern, even in the IDE, right? Never mind source code, tooling that's out there for enterprises, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, cool. But where do you want to go next?
There was.
I threw one.
Go ahead, Josh.
I threw one in the Slack. Just saw it 2 seconds ago. Rather unpleasant. Don't know if you want to talk about it real quick.
In 2023, there have been over 417,000 workers laid off at tech companies globally, including Spotify's third run. I heard Spotify had 3 rounds of layoffs.
It's 3 days ago. They just did another
I saw a clip from twit.tv on Instagram or something, and they were talking about that. Because Spotify is
louder.
But Spotify is one of the centers of the podcast ecosystem, right? They're a big player in the podcast space, and they recently canceled a couple of shows that were pretty popular on Spotify and are now on their 3rd round of layoffs. Now, it could also be indicative of whatever's going on at Spotify, and it's, a Spotify issue, not a market or global industry issue, but who knows?
No, it's and DMZ is pointing out there's lots of layoffs, but also lots of hiring, and that's not actually true, DMZ. I know too many people that have been looking, they got laid off and have been looking for work for way too long. It's been taking people at higher levels, CISO level and near there, over a year to get another gig. It's been taking people at engineering and pen testing firms, if they don't know somebody, it's been taking them quite a while to get new work. So I know there's lots of job ads out there, but I don't think
maybe
a lot
he means
of them
at Spotify.
serious.
But maybe he means at Spotify, though.
Oh, that's entirely possible. But yeah, but the fact that 417,000 workers laid off in 2023 at tech companies doesn't mean they're tech workers. It means they're at tech companies. And I know a lot of tech companies dropped half or more of their sales and marketing divisions, by the way. But there are still, yeah, you know, I'm okay. So DMZ is saying that there's still lots hiring. It's better than when the dot-com crash happened and 300,000 were out of work and there weren't jobs. I am old enough to have lived through the dot-com crash, and it was a sucktacular time, I will admit. That's when I made my move to change states, change careers. I became a cop and did that for a few years. Bounced on Bourbon Street as my first gig down there. It was definitely interesting, but I agree and I disagree. And maybe it's just rose-colored glasses after over 20 years at this point. But it was bad, but there was still a lot of other types of work available. Okay, well, I saw that there was work there. I went. You know, moving is an option I took, and it was no big deal. But a lot of people right now, there's so many people. I think everybody knows somebody out of work right now in the tech field. And it's tough.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's tough. And I think it's a horrible time of year to do it, but
oh God, yeah.
Whatever, they chose it. I am a little concerned about that person they laid off who was on maternity disability. They might get some FMLA-ish heat for that.
Oh, yeah, the one who was on maternity leave and got laid off while on maternity leave.
Mm-hmm.
That's terrifyingly stupid.
Can you do that? Are there U.S. laws against that? I know in Europe there's laws in multiple countries against that, right?
Right. Yeah, and that's why I was said the Family Medical Leave Act and disability, because I suspect there's some issues there. But you know. And like I said, 17% of the workforce, am I reading that right? That's a pretty good chunk.
Oh, is that the Spotify one?
Mm-hmm.
So Spotify laid off 17% total, or in the third round only?
That's what I'm trying to figure. I was reading quick, and I saw that they had laid off 17% of their workforce, but I was trying to figure out if that was the total. The way they're saying it, it's the total. But damn. Which is interesting because we've had other areas where people can't find enough workers.
Yeah, true. But then there's also the ones that are put ads up for, XYZ position, and they're not actually hiring. They're putting it out there to say, oh, don't worry, we'll get somebody soon. No, you won't. I talked to some people that are HR executives, and they say basically, several of them have said, I'm not going back to large corporations. I work with small companies now. Why? Mm-hmm. Because large corporations' HR is broken, and it almost seems like it's deliberately broken. You cannot get a candidate through the process. So it's a little terrifying.
It is. It's a lot terrifying.
Okay, they laid off 1,500 employees. Thank you, Shep. The Spotify laid off 1,500 employees in the third round of job cuts. So I don't know if that's not 19%, though, I don't think. How many employees do they have total? Anybody know?
Oh, it's in there. But 3,680 in Jeep in Detroit. USPS is getting ready to lay off 50,000. I'd heard that before.
VMware laid off 2,867.
It's crazy. The post office one kind of surprised me because, all of the, like Amazon is leveraging the hell out of them. The UPS has a last mile USPS delivery option now to keep the cost down. They're starting to use them for identity proofing for federal employees. There's all these things that are being money and work going toward the post office. I'm surprised they're laying off. But others, not so much.
And then I
this
think
is depressing.
Hey, can we talk about something happy in the last 15 minutes?
Yeah, let's find something. What do we got that's happy out there?
Not much.
Not much.
More vulnerabilities.
I played my card.
More vulnerabilities in routers and stuff. TinyXML. That's kind of depressing. My story number 4. Supply chain failure. That's not really happy though.
1 in 4 apps remain exposed to Log4Shell. Oh my
That's
God!
not happy
Seriously?
either.
Covered that.
Yeah, we covered that.
I know, but it's still. I think every time I see that, it bugs me.
Yeah.
Stealthy Linux rootkits. That's not really happy either.
Yeah. So, I put out a reminder that Apple released
story
a whole
5.
bunch of updates.
Lee, your story 5.
Oh, scrolling.
We talked
That was the
about that.
President's Cup. We talked about
Were you
that.
asleep?
We talked about that.
Yeah, right.
So, one of the spins I
there's
put
a whole feed. There's a whole feed that I subscribe to that's positive security news.
No way. Is that
You
even a
couldn't pick
thing?
any of that.
I know. Well, maybe I need to make sure I pick at least one story from that feed. Where is that?
Yeah.
Where is that feed?
Well, he's looking.
Yeah. Well, look for that. Talk about something else. Hold on.
Researchers find AI could make batteries last longer.
Oh, did you see the spoof commercial? One of my friends sent it to me, where it's an electric car powered by AA batteries. Did you see that?
Oh, the one where the Tesla rolls over.
No.
And the thing comes off and it shows AA batteries inside.
No, it's like Elaine from Seinfeld. What's her name? She does the commercial, and it's a whole commercial for an electric car powered by AA batteries. And she's like, you only have like 20,000 AA batteries, and she's like, you can replace them one at a time, or like as they fail, or you can push this button and it will eject all the batteries, and it shows the batteries flooding out of the side of the car. And it's like mounds of AA batteries outside the car, and then you can replace them. And I'm just like, I was talking to my friend who sent it to me. I'm like, dude, like, I wonder if someone actually did the math. Like, are those numbers accurate? Like, does someone do the math on like, what's the kilowatt hours in Tesla? And like, how many AA batteries would you have to put in a car to equal that amount of battery power? Like, I wonder if someone did the math, because you could totally do the math.
wouldn't be
I'm like, now I
AA.
kind of want to do the math. Like, how many AA batteries would be equivalent to? Someone asked ChatGPT or something. How many AA batteries would be equivalent to the battery in a Tesla Model 3? Like,
Well, the original Teslas were using 18650s, and I forget how many they had. It'd be a lot, because the 18650s are 3.7 volts. The AA's are 1.5.
Oh, there you go. So you could do math. I like math.
Yeah, you absolutely can do the math, but my God, it would take so many batteries. Like the car.
Well, that's the point. I want to know how many. Like, how many would I need? I mean, it's awesome. Someone right now is doing the math. Someone's listening to the show and has paused the show to go do the math. And salute to you, my friend.
Oh my God.
You're
I'm watching
my
the
hero.
commercial. It's so funny.
Oh my God, the commercial's hilarious, dude.
Oh dear God, that's funny. Hang on, I'll throw the.
I mean, when you stop at a charging station, right? You
Discord.
just stop at a Walmart and buy every single AA battery they have in stock, and that might get you home. Do you guys have electric cars? Are you electric? No one has electric. Am I the only one with an electric car?
Sorry, my car is from 2005. It's not an electric car.
I have that anxiety that I'm going to run out of battery that I'm trying to overcome. So what I do is I try and push the envelope like every single time. And 2 weekends ago.
There we go. Got it.
What is it?
Okay, for its AAA batteries, not AA's, but
AAA.
A single Tesla battery pack has the energy capacity of around 69,417 AAA batteries.
Yes.
If it was only 3 more, it'd be perfect. 69,420.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
69,417?
Yeah.
Listen, man, so the next time someone asks you that question, just say 69,420.
Yeah.
Like, it's easier to remember.
Yeah, put a couple extra in there just for good measure,
Yeah.
right? You might get another 6.2 miles.
Yeah, that's the ludicrous mode, is when you do 69,420, right?
That works.
So Model 3 only needs 40,100. And a Model Y, 51,773.
Of AA or AAA? AAA?
AAA.
AAA.
Sorry, it took me a while to get logged into Bard.
No, so I push my battery sometimes to be like, can I make it? Like I play that game. And I did it the other weekend. And I pulled it in my driveway, and I think I had 4%. That's as much as I pushed it. And I need to do better. I need to push it down to like 1%. And so I screenshot that, and then I send it to my friend KF. I'm like, dude, look, I'm getting better with the battery anxiety. Like, I got all the way down to 5. And in the background, there was a software update. He's like, hey, I need to do a software update, too. Yep. Plugging in, doing both. Charging, doing the software update. Got it down to 5. I was sweating it a little bit, but like, he's like, you need to push the envelope and sweat it a little bit so that you're not as nervous the next time it gets down there. Because you're like, totally fine. Totally. Because like, it's not like your phone. Like, think about like your phone, when you get down to a lower percentage, you're like, crap, I'm out. But the battery in your phone's small in comparison to the battery in your car.
Yeah.
Right? So you can push your car, because like 5% in your car is still a lot more than 5% on your phone.
Yeah.
But also, on your car, you don't have a battery pack. Like, Bill, I think you were the first person I saw with a battery pack. We were at DEF CON. We were at DEF CON. It was before like everyone had a battery pack for their phone, and you had a battery pack for your phone. I was like, dude, what is that? I'm like,
it was probably the size of a car battery, right? Like, it was probably this big old honking thing.
No, it wasn't. It was like a reasonably sized like battery kind of thing.
Probably only the same size as the phone.
I think your phone was really small. I think it might have been a flip phone. Did you have a flip phone?
Yeah, I had a bunch. I mean, for a long time. I still have a few of them laying around that I just really enjoy. Like, I don't use them, but like they're great art, right?
You just take out the flip phone and you just flip it open and like close it just for it's like a fidget spinner.
Tactile thing.
It's a fidget spinner. Yeah.
Yeah. I think my first battery pack was you remember the pineapple battery pack they had, Hack 5 had?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That was my first battery pack for a phone. And I think I still have it somewhere. Jesus. It's probably puffed up and they like huge.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't use it, right?
Yeah, don't definitely buy it.
I actually had a battery pack explode on me once, and so I had it charging, and this actually wasn't too long ago, and it was a decent brand and everything, but it started smoking, and right outside my neighborhood is a fire station, so I put it in a metal container and put it in my, because I was like, I don't know, I don't want to put this thing in my car, but put it in my car, and I took it to the fire station, and they like freaked out about it. They were like, now tell me again what this thing is. Like, look, I'm not bringing you a bomb.
I can just see Bill with a metal box that's smoking, walking up to the fire station.
Hey, this is your problem now. This is your problem now. Yeah.
They're like, is there a baby in there? What's going on?
Yeah.
Oh God.
We've heard about you. We're not supposed to open boxes that get brought here by Bill. Like, that's probably a good idea.
What else have you brought the fire company?
Yeah, what else have you brought your local fire station? I can see Bill in a full freaking hazmat suit with the respirator rubber gloves going. Hey guys, can you take this? We should do that.
I can just see him getting out of his car. I can just see him getting out of his car with smoke trailing behind the car. Get out in full hazmat, walk up to like the hatchback or something, pop it open, smoke billows out. He reaches in, picks up a box, and goes, "Here."
Yeah.
Drives away.
Here you go. Good luck, guys. See you later.
For Halloween, you need to do that to them with just some dry ice. And water. Nothing special.
Well, make sure you put the radiation symbols on the sides of the box.
Yes.
No, that's cruel. But just go, here you go, put it down and walk away.
No, someone was asking me earlier, because I said I got this, I have a power brick. It's like a 220 watt or more. I don't remember. Thank you. But it has like 4 or 5 USB-C and 2 USB-A. It might be 500 watts or something, right? And so right now I'm powering my laptop with it and my external screen.
Oh, is that the one you had at the holiday episode? You were like,
Yeah.
look at this.
It's really cool. So I figured I can power my my screen with it too. It's $36 on Amazon. I can tell you what it is. But someone asked me if I was sniffing the power bus to make sure it was clean power. What do you do? Is there something you need for that? I have the USB.
Basically a multimeter type thing. You just
I have the thing that sits in line that gives you the power output, right? But also there's stuff that you can, like he said, Wireshark can like monitor the USB-C bus kind of thing. Is that a thing? Not for power, but for data too. Is that a thing? I didn't. We ran out of time.
You can send packets across to a certain extent. I mean, it's a Thunderbolt. If it's a Thunderbolt USB-C, it depends which iteration of USB-C. Thunderbolts can absolutely send data.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is a Chinese kind of thing. Yeah. GAN3. Mikio Geo. This comes from China. It's $36.99. It's a 220 watt 7 port. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 USB-C, 2 USB-A. And like the top port is the higher output one. That's the one that's powering my laptop. It even has conveniently a little icon of a laptop on it. So I remember which port powers my laptop. And then it has other USB-Cs. And it works great.
Is that the one that's $39.99?
$36.99.
Yeah, I bought a similar, same company, same wattage, but mine has 3 USB-As and 4 USB-Cs, 2 of which are rated for laptops, and so it was more expensive. It was $46.
Okay.
So for $6, one more USB-A. But
I think I maxed it out once. I think I took a picture of it because I was like, I didn't start a fire, which is good. Because like I've got two flippers, a battery pack, the M5 stick, the M5 computer. So like there's 5, and some flipper zeros.
I just want to point out, if anybody's listening, the way that we got here is I was talking about something on fire that I was taking to the fire department. And Paul was like, speaking of fires, I just bought this $36 charger. That's how we got here. So
and it hasn't caught fire yet. I think I'm amazed it hasn't caught. I haven't had to put it in a metal box and take it to my local fire department yet, Bill. So I'm totally expecting there could be a day that I do that, and I will totally take a video and put it on social media, because that would be epic. And it hopefully doesn't light my house on fire. But yeah, but I'm considering buying another one because like it's so useful, because I'm like, well, I want to charge my laptop, but I got like. The hacker thing is I got like a million other things that need to be friggin' charged. Again, like 2 flippers, the M5 sticks, some battery packs, like whatever. You always got stuff you need to charge. A phone. Now I got a phone. Now I have a second phone because I hacked my Pixel 3 XL to run Kali Linux NetHunter. And my wife is also questioning why I have 2 phones now. I'm like, it's totally for hacking, sweetie. It's fine. Like, it's not.
Why is Ashley Madison on that phone?
It's not that kind of penetration. This is penetration testing.
Dude, right now, there are so many people. Like I have that second phone too that gets so many questions. Right? You know, like it just gets so many. Like it's the other phone. Like I don't.
We need to reverse. We need to get rid of the stigma. Much like I want to get rid of the stigma that a hacker is someone in a dark hoodie, right? In a dark room, and then there's like source code like everywhere, like not just on the screen, but like the source code just kind of flows around you, like in the movie Hackers when they're reverse engineering the Da Vinci virus.
At myself.
Yeah, there's always this
source code.
Want
to tell Paul about what his background looks like?
Source code everywhere, right? Yeah, I guess that's not supposed to be like that. That's a video game cabinet that's supposed to be running Double Dragon right now, and is not. It needs some love with a soldering iron right now, I think is what we're saying. It doesn't
reduce the fact that it's cool. It's just giving you a hard time.
It is
I
cool.
was going to say, the part of the reason I went down this thread is back a number of years ago when I was first traveling, I went to, I was out of the U.S. I might have been in China, and I had a couple of different chargers with me. One was fine with 220 volt. The other one smoked the moment I punked it in. It was very anticlimactic. It just went pop.
But hold on, I just
done.
want to go back to reversing the stigmas really quick before we wrap up.
Yeah.
One, hackers don't all wear hoodies. I mean, like if it's cold, we might wear a hoodie, right? But like hackers, my whole point, I put this on social media because I was watching the news. I actually took a picture of my TV when it came on because they were talking about ransomware targeting healthcare. And they had this image, the typical image of the hacker with the, the air quotes hacker with the hoodie and source code behind them. They were talking about ransomware in healthcare. Like, that's a horrible stigma. It's terrible. Like, it speaks to males that live in their mom's basement kind of hackers. Like, that's not, you've all been to security conferences. We've all been to security conferences together. Like, hackers look like people. Like all different kinds of people is what hackers look like. And that's what I love about our community is that like hackers are people too. And like we look like people. Some people wear suits. We wear all kinds of different clothing. We're from all different backgrounds. We're from all different races, religions, genders, whatever. Like that. And so that when the media has to depict a hacker, they have to put some kind of stereotype on it, which I think is wrong. And I hate that. If you don't believe me, go right now on your computer, go Google search hacker, and go to images, Google image search hacker, and you'll be like, what the fuck? And then you'll bring up articles from all the popular news outlets that their image for that article about hackers is that quintessential stupid hacker thing, which I hate. I wish we could change that. The other thing is like multiple devices or two phones. Everyone thinks that you have two phones like you're cheating on your spouse. Like, no. We're hackers. We have lots of friggin' devices for basically, right, Bill, shenanigans. Right? That's really why we're carrying around multiple devices, shenanigans. It's because like, we're curious. We want to test out our stuff that we're working on. So we might have two phones. We might have a flipper. We might have all these like devices. Does that mean we're doing something evil? I mean, maybe not, right? Like if it's me, definitely not. Like just throwing that out there. Definitely not evil. But we're just curious, right? Shouldn't be a stigma if you have multiple phones, you're cheating on your spouse, right? Also, the other thing that got me in trouble with the wife, Tindy is where you order electronics from. It's not Tinder. It's not a dating site. She was looking at the credit card statement. We're sitting in bed, and she's like, what the fuck is Tindy? What is that?
$150 a Tindy?
What is that? I'm like,
yeah, that's funny, man. That's good.
Right? I'm like, you see his add-ons I got from my Flipper Zero? She's like, flipping, what are you talking about? I'm like, no, it's for ordering electronics. We need to get rid of these stigmas. We need to educate the people. Yes, we order stuff from Tindy, and it's just because we're nerds and we want to play with electronics. We're not trying to cheat on our wives.
Damn straight.
I needed plugins for my second phone, so I got them off of Tindy.
Right.
I am curious though, like what? So if you were to put if you were to give an icon to hacker, what if it's not a guy in a hoodie? What is it?
That's a great question, Bill. I don't know what it would be, because again, we go to any security conference and we sit around with fellow hackers and. It's vastly different, right? Everyone we sit around with is one of the things I love about our field. Like, we do need to work towards more diversity. I'm not saying we don't need to still work towards that because we absolutely do. And if you talk to more senior people that are building teams, right? I was listening to Whitey Cracker on the Sean Ryan show, and he absolutely said that. He's like, I built a team for the company I'm working for. He's like, I wanted a lot of diversity because everyone coming from different backgrounds, different experiences is going to bring something different to the table. And what we need in hacking is people with different perspectives that think about things differently, right? When I sit around with my team at my day job, everyone has a different background from a different part of the world, from a different upbringing, from a different experiences. And that's what makes it great when we tackle problems is we all have a different perspective, right? And we need to work towards building more diversity, certainly. But I don't think there shouldn't be a mold. There shouldn't be a single image that we portray as a hacker because hackers are just people too.
The cop-out answer, Paul.
Thanks, Bill.
We need.
I can always count on you to call me out. That's one of the reasons why I love you and love that you spend time with us now as a host on this show, because you call my shit out every time. You're not afraid to do that, and that's why I love you.
Yeah.
So it would look like a stick figure. To answer your question, Bill, it would look like a fucking stick figure, all right? Does that answer your question?
With 2 phones. A stick figure with 2 phones.
A stick figure with 2 and like a flipper zero on the belt, right? Like 2 phones, a flipper zero.
Yeah.
Well, and there you go. Hopefully we can get the album art for this show to have a stick figure. It's easy this week, right? It's a stick figure with 2 phones, right? I think we should end on that note. So thank you, everyone, for listening and watching this episode of Paul's Security Weekly. We'll see you next time. Over and out.